Today is the continuation of what I talked to you about yesterday on my first post regarding the exciting 3 months of time in Hilo that eventually became a 4-year program. And I'll share with you what gave me the lasting and how I lasted that 4 years in Hawaii. Between Hilo and Kona, I was going back and forth those two cities on the big island of Hawaii. But most of the first 3 months was in Hilo. So most of these lessons were learned during that time. And then Kona became some of the practicing where I put into practice some of the principles I'm going to mention to you. And I was introduced to big ideas, and big ideas became part of what you were supposed to do, to take and process it down to where you can take bite-sized pieces and make them applicable to your own life, so you can, instead of having to go back and forth and going back to the instructors and all that, you begin to take your own life and you walk it out based on these big ideas. And one of the ideas I was introduced to when I came to the school was the idea of having the fear of the Lord. Now, all of us must have some healthy element of fearing God because He is an awesome God. He's a big, great, and wonderful God. But at the same time, the more we understand His character, this is how I was taught, the more we understand His character as loving, faithful, just, and merciful God, the more we understand some of His characters, the more we realize that our fear for Him is not because we are afraid of all the things that might happen to us. Like when I was a little kid, my grandmother who raised me used to say to me, you need to be very, very honest, because if you lie, every little lie that you tell or every little lie that you end up having represent God taking a basket full of charcoal from the coconut shells that we use in the islands for heating and fire. He would take a full basket of that and put it aside for you. So when you come there, you end up in the fire made up of those charcoals. When I came to Hawaii, I was introduced to this idea that fearing God is rooted in a love relationship. I tell you my experience with my grandparents. My grandfather was a very stoic man. He was my hero. Taught me how to discipline. God taught me how to go find seasons of different necessities that we have in life. I was always afraid of him from the standpoint that I respect him. I thank God for him because him and my grandmother took me up and raised me as a little kid. And my mother had another family, so I ended up living with them most of the time. But on my grandfather, out of respect for him, I did not want to bring any of my trouble that I had from what I did in the village with other young people like me. Because, in the village, kids fight, and we used to fight with the kids in the village, and sometimes I beat them, and their fathers would come and say to me, if you do that again, I'll come and beat you up. And if I got beaten, I didn't want to bring that kind of news to my grandparents because I respect them. I don't want them to be in trouble because of my issues. So it became an awareness that there's an element of respect, and then that there's an element of loving them and having to be protective of them in my own unique way as a little kid. But when I was introduced to the idea of the fear of God in Hawaii, it was with the understanding that the more we get to know God through His character, the more or the less we become afraid of Him, but we become more protective and more involved in having him pleased with our actions and with how we live. So that was the idea of the fear of God. And then you take scriptures like the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, or the beginning of knowledge. The fear of the Lord keeps one from evil. And then the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the fear of the Holy One is understanding. You and I would like to have that element of understanding. Hey, by the way, this is Sosenile. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for coming back. And I would like to invite you to come back over and over again. I will begin to post some videos on some of these big ideas, how I was introduced to it, and my own struggle to make them real so that I can live life based on the application of them. And this today, I want to just kind of share with you my own experience with the first time I was introduced to this big idea of having the fear of God. And it came to me during the training in Hilo that the fear of God is you have a healthy appreciation of how much He loves you through the Word and through His promises. And then you understand who He is by looking into His character, because you know a person by his character. And God is known throughout the Word as a faithful God, a loving God, a just God, meaning that He will not ask you to do something that He does not know Himself or do Himself. And that was a strange phenomenon for me, because I thought, here's a big God. And by the way, because He showed Himself to me in a way that I never could deny it. And sometimes I'll be able to talk to you about that particular experience that marked my life forever. It stayed with me all of my life. And but anyway, we're talking about the fear of God, having the fear of God that protects your heart and allow your heart to have some set of guidelines or some sets of internal principles that you go by. He's faithful, therefore I want to do things that represent faithfulness so that I can reflect Him. He's just, that way I can do things and adjust my attitude when I feel like I have been wronged. I can go back to the fact that He is just, and therefore I need to bring my heart back in alignment with doing the right thing, not rebelling or reacting against something, but having that peaceful transition from, even when you're wronged by somebody, you can count on the fact that you can come back to God, and because He has been wronged. The Bible says that Jesus came and He was sinless, and yet people crucified Him, and people hated Him, people mocked Him, and yet He stood with forgiveness. So the exchange of life from being wrong to knowing that God is a God of just and a God of mercy, and therefore I realized that part of what was required of me in that time was I need to forgive. I need to let go. There are times that I feel like I was the right one, and even though I know the other person is wrong, I need to let go. That's not just to say that you don't care, but you go back to see the character of the God that you love and you have a love relationship with, and now you want to be like Him. So you go back and learn how He forgave, learn how He adjusts and do things to us. There's so many stories in the Bible. The story of the prodigal son who took his father's treasury and left and go away, wasted it all. And when it was time to come home, he was doing a speech to ask his father for forgiveness, that he sinned against him and sinned against God in heaven. And the father said, "No, you're my son. I put a sandals on his feet, put a rope around him. So we see the exact opposite of how our human reaction to God's reaction. And having understand that and bringing it to the fact that God wants to put his nature in us. That was how I was taught and how I began to transition into this. It's not my issues that I need to get even. It's my issues that I need to forgive and then learn how to come back and see how God get with people. He was, the Bible talks about the children of Israel going all out against him, and God still said, I stretch out my hand up towards you. And so those are some of the examples. And when it comes to the fear of the Lord, it's having a sense of inner guidelines or internal guidelines in your heart and mind that is rooted in the character of God. And then as you go through life and you make choices and decisions on what to do, how to do, who you partner with in life, you bring those unjust moments and times to him and to say, how do you deal with this? And then we adjust and we make the right adjustment, and those right adjustments will serve us on the long term. For 4 years I lived in Hawaii. I had no idea how I was going to live that long in Hawaii because I came for only 3 months. But I tell you, that time went so short. It feels like it just came and went because I was having an adventure of a lifetime adjusting to these patterns that reflect the fear of God. Because the Bible says the fear of God, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. That's what Psalm says. And then in the book of Proverbs, it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So when we bring our issues that we have been unjustly dealt with by our friends, people that don't understand and don't know us, we bring it to him, and he will give us understanding on how to relate to that and how to relate to him. And as we relate to him, we make him happy. That was how I felt. It makes you happy. And the more you're happy doing things that pertain to how do I live? How do I live with people that I come in touch with every day? And so it was a very different element of life. And those principles began to drill deep into my spirit. It doesn't mean that you're perfect. It just means that you have a pattern in which you can come back to making the right connection. In the islands, I was more concerned about not sinning. I was more concerned about not doing this. And most of the time, I was doing my fear of the Lord amongst the religious circles. But when you go out into the world, every day you're confronted with people misunderstanding you, people making fun of you, people don't believe you, people don't understand you. And so you have to adjust, it's not tolerating people, but you have some real issues to deal with in relationship to how you feel treated when people treated you differently, and how you can release forgiveness and then come to God and see his character. Because every time you are engaged with these kinds of issues in the world, you come back and you see the character of God and you say, okay, this makes sense. This is what the whole game is about. The whole lifestyle is about, is learning how to walk with him and learning how to fear him, so that you're always reminded of, I'm here to please him. I'm here to make him happy. And when I do things for a purpose, there's a level of excitement. It became a strong point of my approach to everyday living, to say, I want to please God. I want to make him happy. And because my life is a love relationship with him, I love him. I love God with all of my heart. And I want to please him in what I do. Needless to say, these 4 years that I spent in Kona, in Hawaii, became years of establishing these kinds of patterns based on the fear of the Lord and some of the other things, and what I'm going to talk to you some more as I go through this first few series of videos to share with you some of the principles I learned and how I learned it. The one area that really surprised me in this area of the fear of the Lord is when you're in a right place where there are people who are having the same intention, the same desire. You know, their expressions of life match with yours, or you realize in some cases in our time of prayer in the school that I was in, I was surprised the first time I was introduced to this idea of the fear of the Lord, because we were going to pray and somebody would raise their hand and said, I'm sorry, I need to ask for forgiveness. And we say, so what did you do wrong? And he said, well, I went to some food that, to the kitchen or passed by the kitchen, and I saw something, I picked it up. I didn't ask anybody, and I am really sorry. And I looked at it. This was my early days. I looked at this and I said, oh my God, oh my God. I will be in that same place, because if I don't watch the pattern that is being set before me, and you don't accept everything that other people go through because you're different from them, but you accept the principles on why and what they're doing. They're doing it because they don't want the praise from people. Nobody saw them. Nobody. And sometimes that's the reason why a lot of people lie these days, is nobody will find out. And because we have not been taught on how to have a love relationship with God, where you're more concerned about having him happy with how you live your life. And I noticed that was when that idea started in my life, where you can be alone anywhere in the world. And if you have a love relationship with God and you're committed to fearing him, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if nobody's watching you. It doesn't matter if you're alone or you're with people. It doesn't matter, because most of the time you can be around other people and you have the nastiest ideas and thoughts. So have you ever been in that place? Have you ever been in a place where, say, I knew this from the islands, where somebody would catch a small fish. And then when they tell a story, because they're so caught up with the idea, I'm on a roll, and I'm gonna give a little bit of a exaggeration. So you exaggerate that I got a big fish like that. And while you're doing that, as soon as you finished, there was that little voice that says inside of you, it was not really that big. But one thing led to another, and we just expand. And we're awesome. We're awesome. But in that awesomeness, you can lose the most important relationship in your life, and that is the relationship with the one who sees everything. And I've been caught in that place. I have also asked for forgiveness, because it's the need we have. We need to be needed, be loved by people. And so, by the way, this is Sustainable Out. My goal in this video is to help share some of these little things that took place before, but they have become big things because they become a pillar and a foundation of my own life. And how I found joy in serving God was because of this. I didn't find joy in serving God because of what other people say. It's because I discovered the pattern and the pathway to happiness and to joy was having this kind of love relationship with God where you fear Him, not because you're afraid of Him, but you want to respect Him and give Him the rightful place in your life. He governs you by His truth. This is Sucinda Leao, and come back and visit. If you like or any of this help you or give you any value, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends so that other people can see more of these videos. All right? God bless you, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye for now.